Thank you for clicking on the Just Another Football podcast. If you want to share it with your friends, feel free. And if anyone wants to come on the podcast, if you're a fan of a certain club, get on contact with our Twitter, which is @JustFootballPod, and we may be able to get you on. Oh my god, everyone, get the fuck off Twitter. Liverpool got a jammy win against Tottenham, and they're unfucking bearable. Delete, block them all. Mute the words Liverpool, mute the words Salah, mute the words title, and get them all off. But make sure you don't mute Just Another Football podcast. How's it going, everyone? 2 in a week. You must count yourself lucky. How are you, Harry?
Slightly more upbeat after the last one, mate. I mean, not too bad.
Liverpool,
An interesting midweek fixtures, wasn't that?
It is Amazon Prime week.
Delivered.
It did
Delivered.
deliver. Yeah,
Delivered.
which is great to see.
Yeah.
And it was because this is the issue I always find when it comes to like Christmas. Games come around so quickly. I don't have enough time to think about what's actually happened. Whereas if you get like a week, you're normally a bit more like you have like time to spew over what happened. But because the games come quickly, it's kind of like, oh, Liverpool won. Arsenal got a point against Southampton. Oh, you know. So yeah. It's that time of year where everything comes quickly. And
it is that time of year.
And I tell you what, Firmino really delivered a present for Liverpool fans. Because
It did.
As much as I actually think Harry Kane probably had his worst game this season, Liverpool, I don't think Liverpool were that good either. For these to be the two main contenders for the title demonstrates how poor the league is this year. Like, that's a hot take and a half, but
well,
yeah, no, I just watched the game and I just thought this just feels a bit shit. Like, I thought Henderson and Gini Wijnaldum did nothing this game. I'll be honest. Henderson was run 5 yards, sideways pass, run 5 yards, sideways pass. Gini Wijnaldum would either lose the ball, make a stupid tackle and concede a foul, or attempt to dribble, and that was it. And when you look at Liverpool and you just go, okay, they've got lots of injuries this year, and there's key players they have to rely on. I'm sure lots of them would have said Wijnaldum, Henderson would be two of them names. And for them to put in a performance like that, as much as they got to win, they had to rely on a really lucky loop from the Salah hit. They had to rely on Kane just heading it straight into the ground from 5 yards. They had to rely on Bergwijn missing a good chance, although I thought Alisson did really well with that one. And they had to rely on Kane not jumping for the corner and for Toby Alderweireld to lose his man. And it was just a bit like, I don't know how you can get lucky so often, and then it feels like they rely on luck, like with performances like they put on against Tottenham. What were your thoughts?
Wow, is that the hot take this week?
It must be, because
Did you have to just get that one off your chest?
Yeah.
What did I make of the game? I'm not quite as scathing of Liverpool maybe as you are. I thought that the way they set up, to basically counter-press Tottenham, as they always seem to do against teams. You'd probably say it worked in terms of how much of the ball they had. I mean, they had 75% of the ball, completed like 4 times as many passes as Tottenham. They had more shots on target. However, I don't think anyone could argue Tottenham had the better chances in the game. I mean, as you said, the opening came from a sort of a freak deflection from Salah, and then obviously the corner. Goals happen from corners. It's a really good header, but there were more presentable chances for Tottenham in the game. I mean, nothing about Tottenham's performance surprised me in the slightest. The way they set up, Mourinho's always done this, not just at Tottenham either. It's essentially just kind of like stay in the game as long as possible. They actually said it on the commentary after Salah scored, and they scored shortly after, but they were saying, it does the game plan change from here for Tottenham? And I thought, well, no. And they said no, in fairness. The co-commentator, I don't remember who it was, but said Mourinho and Tottenham, nothing changes. It's all about trying to stay in the game for as long as possible. I think if they'd got to the last 15 minutes at 1-0 down, they'd have been happy with that. As it was, they equalised quite quickly. You got to give them credit. They're very precise on the counter-attack. And when I watch, certain teams, it's all right being a counter-attacking side, but ultimately, if you don't have players that are on the same wavelength, when you're building those counter-attacks and the passes aren't precise and the movement isn't incisive off the ball, then it's no good trying to play that way because the attacks are just going to break down. In terms of Liverpool, I mean, as you said, they've got a lot of injuries. I think it's difficult to legislate for some of the injuries they've had. I mean, Thiago will be playing in midfield. You'd feel Gomez and Van Dijk at the back. Even Matip would have played over Reece Williams. They've got a holding midfielder playing as a sort of a fill-in centre back. Although I do think he's done well there. So it doesn't surprise me that Tottenham had chances in the game. I don't know. Obviously, I think XG would suggest Tottenham had the better chances, the more presentable ones. But in terms of who deserved to win the game, I mean, it kind of depends how you look at it, I suppose. Do you look at it in terms of Tottenham had the better chances and they didn't take them, so they deserve to win? Or do you look at it as Liverpool had the better openings in terms of they had the ball a lot more, they got in behind a lot more. Maybe that final pass wasn't quite there, but they were the team that was maybe you'd say more like proactive in trying to win it. Whereas Tottenham definitely would have taken a point. And I don't care how Mourinho wants to dress it up after the game. Tottenham would have taken a point. And it's a good point. Any point at Anfield's a good point, whoever you are. If you're going for a title, if you're fighting relegation, it's a good point.
If you're playing in the Champions League.
Yeah. But I just... It's a difficult game to assess, I suppose, because nothing about it really surprised me, in truth, that Liverpool had a lot of the ball. They played their usual style, although they maybe weren't quite as aggressive and, they didn't dominate the game as much as maybe they would have had they had a couple of the players that are injured in there. Because I do think when you have, the two centre-backs they have and you sort of have Thiago as maybe the fulcrum of it all in midfield, it is easier to just control the game, control possession, play that high press. And they still did it, but obviously Tottenham got in behind and scored a good goal, on a breakaway. And that was, I think that's kind of maybe what made them think twice about pressing as high up the pitch at certain points.
Also, something I didn't get, Liverpool fans complained. I'm not just attacking Liverpool fans. I'm sure every other fan would have done it. But Liverpool fans complained that the VAR didn't take long enough. And I was like, what?
It's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think the problem is, with the offsides, you just have to look at it as you have to just accept it. I suppose it's a bit like goal line technology. Now, the difference between the offsides and the goal line technology is obviously goal line technology is just a line, it's drawn there, and if the ball's over it, the technology will tell you. The issue with the offsides is, in theory, it should be the same, but the problem you've got is you've got three moving parts. So obviously you've got when the ball is played, and then when the ball is played, you've got when the attackers run and when the defenders run. And, some of the offsides that have been given have been really, really dodgy. But do you want goals taken out for offsides like that? I don't, personally. I think we've been far too stringent with it. So the problem is, I suppose, with Liverpool fans, they've had a few go against them. You think of the Mane goal against Everton, for example. There was one last season, I think, against Aston Villa, which was a bit of a dodgy offside. And I think, in truth, because when that happens, your natural reaction is you want everything of the same ilk to be ruled offside, whether it's right or not, whether you agree with it or not. You want that consistency. So, I can see why they're upset about it, but I think it's one of those, you just got to trust the technology that's being used at the time,
I agree. So Liverpool fans also said why aren't the two lines being drawn? It's because the furthest point for Son was his left foot, whereas they only do the lines if it's for the arm or if it's for the shoulder.
Yeah, to calibrate it. Yeah.
So that's why. So that our VR's argument would be for those three moving parts. We have one line. We pause it at the point. We have one line for the defender and one line for the attacker, and then we see which line's further across. And to be honest, Liverpool fans last year, everyone said they were called Liverpool because and they had everything going for them. I remember the game against Wolves where they had an offside, which was literally just a toe. So
it's one of those. It honestly, like, you can make. I know people like to joke about Liverpool or the number of penalties that Man United get, maybe, but VAR will help and hinder teams at various different points. It's there to be sort of clinical in its decision making. Now, it isn't always foolproof. It makes mistakes. You'll feel like you've been harshly treated, but to suggest there's some sort of like inherent bias, I think is an extremely strong accusation to make. I just think it's one of those things where poor decisions are made by officials.
Yeah.
And obviously, some teams are going to get the rub of the green. Like, over a longer period of time, maybe a few seasons, it evens itself out. You might feel like over a season, you get some poor decisions. I mean, all I would say with Liverpool fans, I know they were, very, very, very unhappy with a penalty that was given against them a couple of weeks ago against Brighton. And I sort of think, well, there was a similar incident with Salah against West Ham at Anfield, and I really didn't see many complaints, back then about it. So I just think that
football fans are very hypocritical.
they're football fans. That's what it is, Bob. We're all guilty of it, where you remember the decisions that go against your team, right? But you don't remember the ones that have gone for you, if that makes sense. So it's one of those things where it didn't impact the end. They won the game. Klopp was obviously unhappy about it, which he said after the game. But it didn't cost them in the end. So in the wider context of things, it's not a huge issue.
Yeah, another thing that confused me about the game was Klopp used no subs. For a guy that's petitioning to have 5 subs in the game.
Well, I think it's interesting you mentioned that. I think that it's funny he made no. I think there's a reluctance, definitely, and I've observed it from some of the Arsenal matches I've seen and when certain opposition we've played, to use that third substitution especially. Now, I'm not saying not use any, but when you get to that third one and it's sort of like 10 minutes to go, normally you might just like put your third sub on and go, that's it. I think the problem with managers at the moment is there generally is a feeling around football at the moment that injuries are like more prominent. So I think there's 30% more injuries at this point than there was last season. So I think managers are reluctant to make that last change as early, which is why I think they're lobbying for 5 substitutes, because it gives you a bit more leeway in terms of if you pick up an injury and you've made your third sub, obviously you'd have 1 or 2 more. In terms of making no substitutes, it was a weird one, that.
Yeah, I also think I saw a graph somewhere that was just injuries throughout the game. There was no spike at 80 minutes. I'm pretty sure, so that would kind of go against that idea as well. But
the data might not support it. I just think there's a general feeling around people at the moment, which is that there's a reluctance to certainly make substitutions too early because you feel like there could be an injury at any point.
Yeah, and you can go down to 10 men like Arsenal do every week.
Yeah, exactly.
Weird. But yeah, no. So where does each team go from here? I think Mourinho will probably bitch and moan and then realise, we've got a really easy run for the next 6 games, so we'll probably just play that.
It's a weird one with Spurs because I remember when we had Goose on the podcast and he said it would be really good to take from the 5 games they had to take 10 points. I think he said, which was 3 wins, a draw, and a loss. So they haven't taken 5. They've not taken 10. They've taken 8. And I think when you look back at that run, they've won the 2 home games. So they beat us, they beat Man City. They drew to Chelsea, which you'd say at the time was fine. It was a good point. The bad result was the Crystal Palace one. Palace are an awkward team, but I just think the way the game panned out, as I said on the last podcast, I'm very critical of the way they were just passive for about 40 minutes between when they scored and when Palace scored. And I just thought that game was there for the taking. I think a team that's really confident in the way they're playing in terms of like on the front foot, like a Liverpool or a Man City when they're at best a couple of seasons ago, I think they just killed that game off before like the hour mark. Whereas Tottenham, they got their goal and then it was like, okay, well, we're in the position we want to be now. Let's let them play. So I think when you're assessing it from a Tottenham point of view, who have they got this weekend? They've got Leicester, haven't they?
Yes.
So you say easy. I mean, I think it'd be interesting.
That's difficult game.
They've got. I know they've got Leicester and Wolves, haven't they, in the next 2 games? I think, and then you're right, it gets a bit easier.
Yeah.
I'm just interested to see how they play in some of these games where, like, I don't think Leicester are going to come flying at them, especially the game last season, if you remember it, after lockdown, where Tottenham pretty much got them on the counter attack 3 times before half time, beat them 3-0.
Yeah.
I think Leicester will set up in a similar way to the way they did against us, the way they did against Man City, where. Yeah, exactly. So I think the onus will really be on Tottenham to take the game to Leicester, and Leicester will hit on the counter attack with Vardy and sort of Tielemans and Maddison trying to put him in behind. And I just think that it'd be interesting to see how they manage a game like that. I'm sure we'll get onto predictions later on, but where do Tottenham go from here? I don't want to talk positively about them, but if you go to Anfield and you lose in the 90th minute, you can't beat yourself up about it too much. It's a very, very difficult place to go. I mean, one team got a point there last season. So, and no one has so far this season. It's a very difficult away game. They've been playing well at home. They've had a couple of good wins recently, and they were just fresh off a really poor performance against Fulham. There was always going to be a reaction, I thought, and yeah, I'll be interested to see where Tottenham are, 5-10 games down the line. But I'm a bit concerned. I'm not as concerned as I was maybe a couple of
Yeah,
games ago,
fair
but
enough.
yeah,
What about Liverpool? I can see Liverpool.
it's just weird this season. Liverpool,
I
I can't
I
really
mean,
work them out.
it's theirs to lose, isn't it? It's got to be theirs to lose.
I definitely think they're favourites. I definitely because I just think that the performances they're capable of, in terms of like when they beat Leicester or when they beat Wolves, a couple of their good performances, or when they beat they beat us, they were really good. I think that no other team in the league is capable of playing like that, and I'm sure we're going to get onto a couple of other teams that are going well at the moment. But in terms of the way they can control a game for large parts of it, create chances constantly, score lots of goals. I just think that not a lot of teams in the division are capable of reaching the heights they are. It doesn't mean they're going to do it on a consistent basis, and it doesn't mean the bar is going to be set that high. But in terms of you saying it's theirs to lose, I certainly think that when you look at the performances they're capable of, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I also think teams like Chelsea have just been, I was looking
Well,
at.
we'll get on to talk about Chelsea, I'm
Yeah,
sure, but I
sure.
just think that I just think you're right. It's Liverpool's to lose. That um, and I hope they win it. Good God, looking at some of the other sides up
God
there,
no,
I could make a lot more
imagine
peace
their,
with them winning it.
but imagine their fan base. Imagine Twitter.
I'm fine with that. I actually don't. I know you say about Liverpool fans on Twitter. To be
God.
honest, we've been an Arsenal fan. They're probably one of the fan bases you have like the least interactions with. Because there's a massive like Man United Arsenal clash on Twitter. Tottenham and Chelsea are London rivals, and we just don't like Man City. I don't think anyone
No,
likes
God
Man
no.
City. Do
No
you know
one
what I
likes.
mean?
God, yeah, I remember. God, no one should like Man City either. You're not
Mm.
allowed to, in my eyes. To be a
No. So
yeah.
as much as I don't want this to turn into like a Liverpool love fest, I sort of look at it and I think, yeah, maybe some of their fans are a bit annoying at times, but they're a proper club that's just done things well.
Yeah.
Like you can't actually begrudge them for it. It's not like they're Man City or they're Chelsea where they just essentially won the lottery with their ownership, for example. I just think they're a really, they're a proper club and they've got a really good manager and they've just backed him and they've done a really good job in the last 5 years and I can't begrudge them for that.
So it's interesting to say that because I've got like the Man United fans. The Man United fans I know are really nice people. So I actually have quite a soft spot for Man United. So it's interesting. I think that often disperses like fans' views of like how likable the people are that they associate.
Yeah,
with
it does. It does. It definitely does. Definitely
Uh,
does.
so yeah, speaking of Man United, Man United v Sheffield United was another weird game of just goalkeeper mistakes. I mean, Ramsdale's struggling this season.
It was
But Henderson, I just thought
poor.
it was weird. He was so good for Sheffield United, and his what was weird was on that second goal. What was so good for Sheffield United for was coming and claiming crosses like that. But then he kind of because he didn't go. So Lindelof wins the header, it bounces off McGoldrick and then goes in. But Henderson kind of like lets it go in, and it's kind of just. It was a weird game. I mean, Man United got 3 points. When they went 1-0 down, I thought this is all of our predictions about how they've 100% away record going in the bin. But I thought it was a classic Ollie Gunnar Solskjaer Man United performance where they transitioned quickly, they worked well, and they caught a team of Sheffield United that just looked lost in the way they press. I thought more than anything else.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
I wonder if it's no fans and like the fans would urge them on to press more and work to the final whistle. But when you watch them press compared to when you watched them press 12 months ago, it was they'd see a centre back and they trigger.
I agree.
And go.
I agree with that.
But now maybe it's like, well, I'll just calm that down because he's worried about injuries and worried about the thin squad. But it doesn't have that same impetus. They're like Leeds this year were like Sheffield United last year. This ultra high press. They're going to go for you, but they're going to let really high percentage shots go against you. Now it's just like they just lose that impetus. So when you do get really, I say lucky, when you do really well to get a corner, a couple of goals against a team like Man United, you need your defensive press to be there to make sure that you win the game 2-0 or 2-1, not lose it 3-2. But then Rashford looks really good, and he looks like a player. Martial good to get a goal. I think is that his first goal of the season.
They'll be in the first goal in the league.
So if Man United, which to be fair, if they win their game in hand, they go above Tottenham. Of if they can push for a title, I mean, people would. I don't think they can either. But
Well, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
So the reason I don't think people think Man United can win a title is because of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, whereas I think it's because they don't have a strong enough DM to help protect that defence and have the defence that they had last year. So I actually think this like quick transition they've got going this season is really well fit to do well in this league. And if you were to ask lots of people what's the like identity of this Ollie team, I think they'd say about like using that pace and using that quick transition, and then using players like Pogba and Bruno to distribute quickly, and then using Maguire's passing ability to try and get it to those people to beat the press that you normally see with like Brighton and teams like that. So I don't want to say they're title challengers because I don't like building Man United up because I feel like they're just going to knock me down. But they are. They're winning the game in moments, but they've got players of the ability that can.
That's what I was going to say, yeah. So I think if you're assessing them on this season so far, I would ask you, how many good performances for 90 minutes do you think they've put in?
I'd say 1 in every 2, I'd actually say, to be honest.
Did you go as far as that? So if you go through the games they've won this season, they beat Brighton. And they were really lucky to beat Brighton. They beat Newcastle, which by all accounts, I didn't actually see that game, but by all accounts, they were pretty good. Although they did win it in the last 5 minutes. They scored 3 goals. So, maybe it's one of those you wear them down and you kind of get your reward late in the game. It kind of sounded like that.
They weren't good against Crystal Palace. They were not.
No, they lost, didn't they? But I'm thinking about the games they've won. Obviously, the games they've lost and drawn, they've been poor in.
Chelsea, Chelsea thought they were fine.
Yeah, Chelsea, they were happy to take a point. I think both teams were. Man United probably a bit more proactive. I think the game that stands out to me, the only game they've really played well in this season, I think, was Everton away.
Yeah.
I thought they were really quite good. But I also think part of that is I actually think the players like playing for Ollie. I do genuinely believe that. I don't think it's a case of he hasn't got them on board, because every time his job comes under threat, they pull it out the fire for him. I just question whether he's got the sort of nous and he's savvy enough to kind of get some of these wins in some of these games. Because, when I look at them, I don't, when you talk about a way they have of playing, I agree they're good in transition. It's why they're getting wins away from home. And I think they'll continue to get wins away from home. But, I don't quite see it. For 90 minutes, I don't quite see a game plan from them. In terms of, okay, we're going to start the game. Like, they start games really slowly. Like this season, even the games they're winning away from it, like even Everton, I say Everton was a good performance. They were 1-0 down. Yeah. They're 1-0 down. They've gone 1-0 down in every single away game this season. And they keep coming back and winning them. But it does catch up with you, When you come up against a really good team, like they did against Leipzig in the Champions League, they lost that game in the first 15 minutes by being 2-0 down. Yeah. And it's one of those, it's not sustainable to keep going behind. Now, you could argue, the argument could also be that they're not playing well, but they're getting results. So when they start playing well, then everyone fucking look out. But it kind of doesn't generally work like that in football, certainly from what I've experienced anyway. Like everyone would say that with Arsenal, they're playing rubbish. But wait till they start playing well. And we never would.
I remember when Emery had that. You weren't playing well, but you were getting points.
No, we didn't. In that 23-game unbeaten run or whatever the hell it was like they're not playing well, but what's a really good sign is they're grounding out results. That's one way of looking at it. The other way of looking at it is that the underlying metrics are really concerning and that actually it isn't sustainable. And it's a bit like that with United this season. Like they have probably 6 or 7 more points than maybe they should do based on some of the games they've had. If you think about them, like they should have lost to Brighton. I think they were mightily lucky not to be well out of the game against West Ham. Yeah. I think that, against Chelsea, they were good, but Maguire could have given away a penalty. Certain things at certain times have, have gone their way, I think. And I think going forwards, they've got good players there. They've definitely got good players there. They're going to be in and around the top 4 just because of the individual quality they've got. I think for them to be challenging for a title, you are right in some of, when you talk about some of the personnel they need, I do think they need another centre half. I just don't think that as a pairing is very good. They definitely need a defensive midfielder, but having a centre half, it's kind of like which ones you value more, I suppose. I mean, I just
I'd
don't
also
think.
say maybe a winger because Mason Greenwood hasn't hit.
Yeah, right winger. He's not a winger. Well, Greenwood's a really good player, but
he's also very
it's
young.
kind of like he's playing in the wrong position, and it's kind of like if he doesn't score, he doesn't do a lot else, and he's really good at like if a chance falls to him, he'll score. He's very clinical, and you kind of want end product at a young age, but he is also young, and so games are going to pass him by. Like I feel like every time they play a big team, he's not really in the game at the moment, and I agree with you in terms of getting a right winger, just someone that in some of these big away games or at home when they need someone to just make the difference, isn't going to be completely like out the game. So.
I'll tell you what though, if they signed Sancho, then I would have reconsidered.
Yeah, I just think they missed the chance to get Sancho last summer, to be honest. I think it's one of those where it was there, the opportunity was there last summer. They didn't get it done. And I wonder if that was their chance to do it and it sort of passed them by, But I do think they need to strengthen in that position.
Yeah, that's what I think will limit Man United this year. Not the manager. Well, maybe the manager, but not like someone like Chelsea.
I think if the points tally was going to be 90 to 100 points again, you'd say the manager is also a limiting factor. I still think he is, but you'd say it with certainty because I just do not think he's going to get enough points to compete in that sort of title race. If the points tally's lower and it's sort of like, low to mid 80s, you could argue that if things go his way, he could get them there.
Yeah, no, I see that. And I think Sheffield United a relegation.
Sheffield United, they're gone, aren't they? It's interesting you mentioned about their high press because I remember when we played them last season, it would have been like last January, and I was at the game. And what really struck me about them was how good they were at limiting our options on the ball. So in terms of like when they would push up the pitch and press us, they were really good at cutting passing lanes. And I just look at them now and they look really easy to play through. Like the first goal Man United score, it's a ball over the top of the midfield and the defence. And it's a really good touch, obviously, by Rashford and a good finish, but it's so easy. And I think in them last season, they weren't easy to play against, And now you wouldn't say they've got the quality, and they didn't have great individual quality last season, but they were really competitive in games. And I just don't see the same level of competitiveness this season with them. And the quality isn't quite there. As you said, if you score 2 goals at home to Man United, you should be taking at least a point. But unfortunately, if you let 3 in at the other end, you can't expect to take anything. So
I think the one positive if you're a Sheffield United fan though is that they haven't done like a Villa where they've turned the squad over, give loads of new players that come in massive.
No. They'll be in a good position. If they go down, they're not going to be in financial turmoil because of it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think they're one of the best teams to go down. If that's the thing.
It's a bit like Norwich last season when Norwich went down. Everyone thought, well, they're in a good position to come back up again. Even if it didn't work out, they've got young players that they could sell, and they were financially in a good position to compete again, and they're top of the championship now. So it's not looking good for Sheffield United at this moment in time, but I think they'll stick with him.
Talking of relegation, we're for the third. So normally every week we're going to do 2 games, then a general point about football, and the one this week is how to avoid getting relegated. Easier said than done, of course. But what I think when I hear teams that are struggling, especially now West Brom have got Sam Allardyce in that, people see that as an option. I think it's a bit high risk, especially long term. But
he's not a long term option.
No, and
never.
Lots of teams, I think, except for Crystal Palace that he's had, have actually gone down years after. I think Sunderland. So that brings up to the question: what do you do? And I think you've just got to. What it's about is building a defence. I think people will say, and you hear this all the time with Match of the Day and stuff like that, a striker will keep you up. A striker won't keep you up. So many times do we see a good striker come in, get 10 to 12 goals in the league, but the team still go down because they can't defend for shit. Think of that Fulham team 2 years ago where they conceded 70 goals. Something ridiculous. So first thing is, if your club is, do you want to go down? And no one wants to go down, of course, like that. But there's some teams that have to do everything they can to avoid it. If Villa went down last year, they were in shit. Even if they sold Grealish, they had players on massive wages. Whereas someone like a Bournemouth, because I'd imagine lots of their players, except from Wilson, Fraser, they go on a free, but they were on big wages. But the rest of the team doesn't scream to me they're not on massive wages, and that's why they could keep a lot of them. So that'd be my first question. My second question would be, what kind of style have you got? Because I don't think you can differentiate too far away from that. You think that De Boer, when he came in at Crystal Palace after Allardyce, then that was such a style switch that they lost 6 games. They were terrible.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just think if you're, that'd be my approach to getting relegated, of understanding how you're going to play, and trying to like build on that and build success. I think, Harry, my question would be to you: would you sign anyone in January if you were in that conversation?
I think the key to avoiding relegation, as you mentioned, having a style, I think honestly, you don't have that luxury. It's all about getting the best out of the players you have at your disposal. And I think you just got to work with what you've got there. Because as you said, if you come in and you start trying to implement new ideas, well, that's great and all if you're trying to, if you're looking at a 5-year plan. But if you just come in and you have all these great ideas and you go, yeah, but we're going to be good in 6 months. Well, you could be down in 6 months. So if you're coming in mid-season and looking to avoid relegation, I do agree with regards to the foundations for teams battling relegation and trying to stay up is being hard to beat, and being hard to beat involves not conceding a lot of goals, especially not cheap goals. Sheffield United last season, the reason they are where they are now is because they're so much looser at the back. They're leaky. That's the problem with them. They're leaky, so they're conceding 2-3 goals every single game. Whereas last season, they'd keep clean sheets, they'd concede 1 goal in some of these games. And it's really hard to win games as a relegation team if you're conceding 2 or 3 a game. I don't care who you've got at the top end of the pitch. So I think the foundations for it have to be built on solidity and structure. I think you do need to be pragmatic with what you've got at your disposal. So it's all good having a lot of, convoluted ideas, but if you don't have the players to execute it, you're not going to get the time. It's cutthroat with these teams at the bottom. You've seen Slaven Bilic lose his job after getting a draw against Man City, because they're looking longer term. They're thinking, is he going to be the guy to keep us up this season? So, it's difficult for me because obviously, look, maybe I'll be watching Arsenal in a relegation fight this season, but I've never really seen a squad, in my time have to battle it, and hopefully I never do. But if it was me, you can't expect suddenly to start thrashing teams and scoring loads of goals, which is why I think a lot of teams, they do go for someone like Sam Allardyce because he's just so tailored for that sort of job.
I remember Owen Coyle doing a terrible job with us because that was our approach. We went out and we thought, we've got Kevin Davis, we've got Mark Davis, we've got Matt Taylor, we've got all this talent. We'll go out and we'll just battle teams and we'll just beat teams. And we either beat, like, first game of the season we beat QPR 5-0. But when it comes to, January and you're just losing every game and you're conceding 4 goals and you've got mistakes at the back. But Sheffield United this season conceded 24 goals. Last season they conceded 39 for the entire season. And that's the 4th best in the league, and they only scored 39 goals as well.
That was the thing. It was a lot of tight games, but if you mentioned that the structure was built on their solidity at the back, not conceding more than a goal per game on average.
So that's if you were to look at it, that's a massive differential from one season to another. And okay, they shouldn't be on 1 point. I think we all accept that, but they shouldn't be. They deserve to be down there. Whereas
deserve to be in the relegation zone, yeah.
Yeah, but then you look at teams like Burnley, who are 17th, Fulham are 18th, and West Brom are 19th, and you go, okay, you look at those teams and go, okay, we've got a chance of staying up here, but what's more chance of doing that? And if you ask West Brom, they'll probably say we'll get Allardyce in. I think if you're Fulham or you're Burnley, you might say we're going to stick with our managers and we're going to try and use the squad we've got because we believe it's good enough. And we'll see. We'll see at the end of the season which style works. I'm really interested to see Allardyce in a job because it's 2020, not 2014. So I want to see if he'll keep up with the times of this new different way, because the Premier League's changed a lot in the last 4 or 5 years. So I want to see if he can still be astute enough to keep a team like West Brom up. Because West Brom are actually bottom on expected points, and they are they are struggling. I think the one player they've got is Conor Gallagher, but other than that,
Yeah, but
maybe
he's on
Mateus,
loan, isn't he?
maybe
Yeah.
Mateus Pereira, but other than that, it looks like a very championship kind of squad.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't invest enough in trying to stay up, I think. I think it was one of those where they might have honestly been looking at it and thinking, do we want to give Slaven Bilic significant amounts of money to spend, or do we think we're going to sack him at some point?
Yeah.
And obviously they've sacked him, and they've got Allardyce in, who, I mean, as you said, it'll be really interesting because he's always been able to do the job, but, you know, I'd love to see him go down. I can't stand the man.
So would I, actually. As a Bolton fan, he's like, oh, you know loads about him. Yeah, but he's also a bit of a dick. Like, the England thing was a massive, fuck you to a lot of England fans. So, yeah, I'd love to see him go down. And, yeah, I think relegation battles are often really entertaining. Like, last year was sick. Like, going into the final game where all the teams were winning, and it ends up being Villa go up because of the Sheffield United game where the guy was in the net, but they changed it, so it was, people say the machine wasn't turned on, but it didn't go over the line.
Yeah.
That ended up just deciding Villa's fate.
It did. It did in the end, yeah.
If you're, we're a sucker for this, to talking about the top six too much, but enjoy the relegation battle because it probably means more than a lot of the top six stuff does.
Of course it does. So these sides, it's huge. That extra revenue, playing in the Premier League, is massive for their future. So, if you think you've got problems, it could be worse.
Yeah.
Could be a lot worse.
It could be worse.
No, I know. That's what I mean. Some of these sides like Bolton, they just disappear down the sort of, the leagues, and you don't see them again. But they're on the way back.
We're on Ian Everett, boy.
Ian Everett's army.
Ian Everett's army. Anyway, we'll go to the predictions. The issue is this week we don't have a guest. So
We don't have a guest.
Here's an idea. If neither me or Harry get it right, we'll give a point to the guest.
Ooh, I like that.
So that's what we'll do.
I like that. Okay.
So
I'm on board with that idea.
Which would be more points than you want it to be if you're me or Harry, looking at previous ones. So first game is Liverpool v Crystal Palace on BT Sports, Saturday 12:30. Enjoy that, Jurgen.
Klopp will be delighted about that. Yeah.
Oh yes. He looks at the schedule and goes, "Oh, not again." Oh, boom, no.
I just want them to lose and interview Des Kelly after the game.
Yes. 3 players go off injured. That was you. That was. But anyway, I think Liverpool win.
Yeah, so do I.
Although Crystal Palace have a knack, they have this really good record against Man City, if I remember. Speaking of Man City, Southampton v Man City on Amazon Prime Video. I know I don't know this one because I feel like Southampton look really good against Arsenal, and they look really good this season, and I can see them beating Man City.
Southampton were good for a half, and then obviously there was the red card, so it's kind of hard to judge what would have happened had that not happened.
I liked Arsenal's goal. I thought Eddie Nketiah.
It was well worked.
If you have a guy in the 10, it's a nice guy to bounce off from Aubameyang.
He dropped in well. It was really good from Saka as well. It's just a really good run. People hacking at him. That's what you want. You want players taking responsibility, and we don't have enough of that. So as I said, they were good in the first half. The second half, they were a bit passive until we scored, and then sort of, I'm not going to say like we would have gone on to win the game, but when you get a red card, it obviously makes it far easier for them to farm possession and basically be the only team with the possibility to win the game. I think that Man City will win just because they didn't beat West Brom.
Yeah, I don't know how it cost my FPL so much.
Yeah, and me. I had a shit week again.
Everton v Arsenal.
I think this is going to be an interesting game.
I think this is going to be an Everton win.
Yeah, I thought you might say that. It's one of those because the form book would say Everton, but I don't think their midfield's very good, as you keep saying. Yeah. So if there is anyone we can play against, there's no reason we can't, if we get in front, beat them. Because I actually think player for player, they're doing well at the moment. Carlo Ancelotti's a good manager, right? There's no doubting that. But would I massively overhaul our squad for theirs? I'm not convinced. I think they've got some good players,
I
but
actually think the age profile of their midfield, especially, is horrific. James
yeah, that's what I
Rodriguez is
mean.
29.
Yeah, so it's annoying. If we had, obviously Gabriel's going to be suspended. If we had Partey in there, I'd feel a lot better about it because I think he would just take control of the midfield. But without him, it's going to be difficult. I'm going to say Desmond.
Fair enough. Newcastle v Fulham. They love doing the 8 o'clock on a Saturday.
Who's showing that one?
Sky Sports, but it's the 8 o'clock on a Saturday, and they love doing a shitter at that time.
Yeah, well, it could be worse. It could be the 7:15 Sunday game.
I've got a feeling I predicted Fulham to lose every single one of these.
I'm going to give Fulham a win. I like Fulham. I like Scott Parker. I like what he's doing.
Newcastle's a win, and Callum Wilson to score. Brighton v Sheffield United.
Brighton v Sheffield United.
Brighton.
I mean, you've got to say Brighton, haven't you?
But if there's any team to not beat Sheffield United, it's probably Brighton right now. Even if
I need Sheffield United to get a result, mate. Brighton are sort of like 16th place rivals.
They are. Spurs v Leicester. Ooh. Leicester looked really poor. I was not impressed with Leicester whatsoever.
Against Everton.
Yeah, they were Yeah, Maddison had a nightmare of a game.
I didn't see it obviously because I was watching the Arsenal game, but it sounded like they were just pretty like Leicester do. As I keep saying this, every time you think they're onto something, throwing a really poor performance in there.
They do, and it's really annoying as someone that likes them.
Mm.
But I will go for a Leicester. No, I'll go for a draw. Draw seems like a sensible thing.
I think I really don't want to do this, but I think Spurs will beat them.
Ooh, that means Leicester have lost 3 in a row then.
No, they beat Brighton, didn't they?
Oh yeah, no, sorry. Still in shit form. Man United v Leeds. This will be an absolute.
It'd be a really good game.
4:30 on a Sunday. I'd recommend everyone
that'll be a cracker. You sort of wish there were fans there for that one, actually.
Yeah,
it'd be great.
That'd be really good. And it's a great matchup.
I think it's a really good matchup because Man United, as you said, are good in transition, but they're not always good in Like they can be quite sloppy in possessions. They've got good ball carriers and some good passers, but did I cut out?
No, you're right.
Oh, okay. I was going to say Man United, yeah, they're good in transition, but they can be a bit sloppy in possession. Like I don't think all their players are press resistant, and obviously Leeds only know one way of playing. They're going to go there and press them hard up the pitch, go man to man, and I think that there's going to be goals. 3-3 draw.
Oh, see, Leeds have this knack of I think they're second bottom on expected goals against, as in they've had the second most. But then they've only taken the 4th most shots, which just represents how when a team gets a shot against Leeds, it's a really high quality. And I just think that'll play into Man United perfectly, and I think Man United will win. But Man United are at home, so if there's one team you don't want to be at home for, it's probably Man United. But yeah, I'll go for Man United win.
Okay.
West Brom v Villa, Midlands derby, which is good to see finally. Villa, but Allardyce is in charge. Draw.
Villa aren't going to win. And I'll tell you why they're not going to win. Since I've put 3 Villa players into my fantasy team,
they've been shit.
They've won one. Actually, no, they beat Wolves, but I don't care because it wasn't one of those players that scored. There's one other game they won, and it happened to be against Arsenal. It's just so typical. So it's just ridiculous. I flooded my team with Villa players thinking, God, they've got some good fixtures till Christmas. And they just, they're not performing. I don't know what's going on. So.
Yeah, but I still think they'll beat. Oh,
no.
Yeah, Allardyce, shithouse. Oh, we've got them organised, a bit of a bounce. Everyone talks about how they've got a bounce after the new manager comes in.
Yeah.
Burnley v Wolves. God in heaven, I would not recommend watching this. This seems boring as hell.
Yeah, it will be.
Draw, because I think both teams are quite shit this year.
Yeah, Wolves weren't very good against Chelsea, but they got a win.
Yeah,
I don't really know how.
Yeah.
I didn't really know. It was a weird game. It almost nothing happened, if you want the truth. Really good goals though from Wolves. I mean, Neto and Podence look really good players. Actually, I have to say.
Podence doesn't look like a football player. Watching him around, I think he should be.
I know, but he's good on the ball, mate. He scored a couple of good goals against us, against Chelsea. I do like him. I'm going to say a draw.
Yeah, this is good because we're doing the same thing to the guests. Chelsea v West Ham. Are West Ham in the top half? They are, aren't they?
Yeah, they drew, didn't they, to Palace?
So
they'll be up there. They'll be like 5th or 6th.
So that's write Chelsea off immediately. Wolves win. No, West Ham win because I've got a lot of evidence to work off here.
Yeah. I think Chelsea will win. Ooh. I think they'll break that hoodoo. I just think that they've got to click into form at some point. They've been a bit underwhelming.
Did you see the Seb Haller over their kick goal?
It's a great goal. Absolute corker.
You can tell it's good because the way he flicks his legs.
He can't score the easy ones, but give him one of those and he's going to bury it.
Yeah, no, I do love an overhead. When you nail an overhead kick, I think it looks amazing.
Something satisfying about it, isn't there?
So, yes. Bit of a shorter episode this week. I couldn't find any news because there's not enough crazy people do crazy shit.
Nah, we've done 2 in a week. I mean, don't be greedy, guys, you know?
Yeah, bloody hell.
What do you expect from us?
Sorry, I should have said the scores from last week. So Harry had a cracker of a week after I gave him the Tottenham Crystal Palace game.
Yeah, because I got it right.
So I'm on 23, Harry's on 26, and then the guest Ali got 1. Is on 18. So
Ali, mate, that's your last performance on the podcast, I think.
So we'll see you all next time.